If you've been watching this channel for a while, you probably know that we love overanalyzing the hell out of random topics using obscure bits of expanded universe lore. As such, we're back on our usual bull Sith again today, this time answering an idle question that you may or may not have asked yourself before. What happened to corpses on Coruscant? With the population of trillions, millions of people probably died across the planet every day. So what became of them? Moreover, what became of the people who fell to an untimely death in the planet's miles-deep canyons? Let's get to the bottom of it.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Let's start at the beginning, long before Galactic City, and long before Coruscant was even known as Coruscant. In the distant past, Coruscant was known as Neutron, and was a chilly world dominated by oceans. It was there that the first humans evolved and eventually banded together under the 13 nations of Zel. In their time, the Zel fought a war with the Tongs, a species that evolved on Neutron alongside them. Both species suffered terrible losses before the Tongs were eventually forced to flee the planet. Because of this ancient war, modern historians were able to determine that the inhabitants of Neutron originally buried their dead. Their graveyards were long ago buried under Galactic City, but archaeological projects occasionally unearth some now and again. The most well-known example was the Ice Crypts, a glacial cave network near Coruscant's south pole, beneath the Hazamadi warehouse district. These ancient caves contained 13 burial chambers, each housing a mummified corpse and a collection of war memorabilia, from weapons and armor to battlefield trophies. It was believed these were the chiefs of the 13 nations of Zel, though the mummies were so ancient that it was impossible for historians to be sure. But obviously, the practice of burying the dead didn't last long on Coruscant. Any trace of the planet's surface vanished beneath Galactic City long before the Republic, or even the infinite empire of the Rakata, was even an idea. By the modern era, the surface may as well have been a myth to the Coruscanti, as more than 1,000 of the city's lowermost levels were completely uninhabitable and largely sealed off. Those who lived in the deepest depths of Coruscant were still miles above the planet's actual surface. Coruscant was effectively an artificial world. Even though the planet it was built around had formed naturally, virtually none of it had any sort of relevance to daily life there. Absolutely everything was contained in Galactic City, which was so vast and so densely inhabited that even the most minute aspects of life on the planet had to be artificially regulated, or else the planet would destabilize and become uninhabitable in less than a day's time. Consider water, for example. Back before Galactic City, Coruscant was largely covered by oceans, but overpopulation drained its seas long ago. By the time of the Clone Wars, Coruscant only had small artificial lagoons, as well as the Western Sea, a larger artificial body of water that was mostly used as a tourist destination. But humans, and most other species for that matter, needed to drink considerable amounts of water each day, and there were trillions of them on Coruscant with no natural reservoirs available. Instead, Galactic City's engineers built a massive, self-contained ecosystem that recycled wastewater, which was bolstered by a massive irrigation system that channeled meltwater from polar glaciers. The atmosphere had to be recycled as well. Virtually every inhabited building on Coruscant featured air recycling systems similar to those used aboard starships, which kept the air breathable. The upper atmosphere of the planet was also dotted by millions of atmospheric dampeners, which soaked up carbon dioxide to prevent the atmosphere from destabilizing. Even the amount of sunlight Coruscant received was regulated. Orbital mirrors were in place around the planet. They could warm or cool the planet to keep its climate comfortable. Without the orbital mirrors, Coruscant actually would have been somewhat cold by the standards of the average human. Coruscant was so utterly artificial that the disposal of things like corpses was a serious logistical problem. Originally, Coruscant handled waste disposal by just dumping trash into the lower levels, which is why so much of the city was completely uninhabitable. The lowest 100 or so levels of Galactic City were completely jam-packed with ancient trash. However, Coruscant's inhabitants eventually determined this was not a good system, as the sheer population of the planet meant the Coruscanti would run out of city if they kept cramming trash into the lowest levels. The obvious solution to this problem was recycling, and indeed, pretty much everything produced or sold on Coruscant was made to be recyclable as a matter of necessity. But some things just couldn't be recycled, such as hyperdrive cores or toxic waste. Coruscant dealt with those kinds of waste by essentially making them someone else's problem. Non-recyclable junk was taken to one of 5,000 garbage pits scattered across the planet, where it was sorted, put into canisters, and shot into low orbit. There, garbage ships working for the planetary government would tow the garbage to one of Coruscant's moons, or to one of the uninhabitable worlds in the Coruscant system. Particularly dangerous junk was just shot into the sun. Theoretically, Coruscant could have dealt with corpses the same way. There's a high likelihood that, at least at some point, bodies were just dumped into the lower levels and left to rot. In more modern times, they might have been lumped in with the rest of the garbage and dumped on one of Coruscant's moons. Perhaps corpses were treated as recyclable items and used as fertilizer in hydroponic gardens. Those solutions would have been callous, but if they were the only feasible option, that was likely how corpses were dealt with. But there's also another way that Coruscant might have dealt with its corpses, one relating to the scenario we mentioned in the intro, people falling into the canyons and making a nasty stain on the streets of the underworld. It probably happened all the time, and unless you got really lucky, falling into the depths of Coruscant was a fatal experience. The canyons that crisscrossed the surface of Coruscant were miles deep, with most of them stretching down at least 1,000 levels, some all the way down to the underworld. A fall of 100 levels was guaranteed to kill most beings. A fall of over 4,000 would render their remains unrecognizable. Consider the case of Mace Windu. He was struck by an intense blast of force lightning and then hurled through a window of the Senate Executive Annex. He blacked out and died from the effects of the lightning pretty much right after he began the long fall to the bottom of Galactic City. From the Executive Annex, which was located near the very top of Coruscant's 5,000 levels, Windu's singed, lifeless corpse would have plummeted several miles and then splattered across some street in the underworld, 4,000 levels down. With the Coruscant underworld being the Coruscant underworld, the odds were that would have been where Mace Windu's journey ended. They barely had government enforcers down there, never mind people willing to scrape some poor sap off the streets. From this, a possible alternative solution to Coruscant's corpse problem emerges. We've assumed thus far that Coruscant actually cared about dealing with corpses, but let's face it, outside of the upper levels, they probably didn't. Mid-level Coruscanti would have probably just tossed corpses over a balcony and let the underworld deal with it. Corpses do decompose on their own, after all, and to be honest, there were probably people down there desperate enough to try a bite. Related to that possibility is an even darker one, the Chthons. Chthons were a species of zombie-like mutant humans that lived in the darkest depths of Coruscant, known for trying to eat anyone or anything that ventured into their domain. They plagued the deepest parts of the underworld for millennia, even after the areas in which they were known to have nests were sealed off by authorities. To put it bluntly, they had to eat something after they were quarantined, and they weren't in any place to turn their pallid noses up at corpses. So, that's our look at Coruscant and how it might have dealt with its corpses, but what do you think? Would you like to see more videos about Coruscant in the future? Free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.